In the year 1555, in a small town in France, a man sat alone by candlelight late into the night. In the silence, he wrote verse after verse with his quill. No one truly understood what he was doing, but he claimed he was writing what he saw. People called him a prophet. His name was Michel de Nostradamus. Centuries later, he would be known by only one name, Nostradamus. His verses were cryptic. He gave no clear locations, no dates, no names. But over time, certain lines began to draw more attention, especially one, "A child shall be born in the West, dragged into an iron cage. And this man, known as Hister, shall bathe the world in blood." There was long debate over whether the word Hister referred to the ancient name of the Danube River or to something else entirely. But in the 20th century, when a man rose to power in Germany, many turned back to that verse. And some believed it was no coincidence. That man's story began much earlier. In the streets of Vienna, a young man tried to make a living by drawing postcards. He dreamed of becoming a painter, but his hopes were shattered when the art academy rejected him. He was alone, scorned, penniless. But inside him, something unseen began to grow. Anger, conviction, and a deep sense of destiny. His identity was forged in deprivation. The dreams born in darkness would later take a very different shape. It was during this period that the young man visited Vienna's Hofburg Palace. As he wandered through the museum, a display case caught his eye. Behind the glass was an old spear, worn and unremarkable in appearance. But the sign beside it told another story. The Spear of Longinus, also known as the Spear of Destiny, believed to have pierced the side of Christ on the cross. The young man couldn't look away. His pupils dilated. His breath changed. It was as if the object behind the glass was not a relic, but something speaking to the emptiness inside him. As if fate itself was calling. Years passed. It was 1919. Germany had been brought to its knees after World War I. The country was in ruins. The economy had collapsed. Unemployment had exploded. The Treaty of Versailles had wounded the nation's pride. German society felt humiliated, crushed, and seething with resentment. In this climate, a young corporal was sent to attend a political meeting in Munich to observe radical groups. As a soldier, he was there merely as a silent witness, but the words he heard sparked something inside him. He stopped being an observer. He stood up and began to speak. According to those who were there, the moment he took the stage, his voice captivated the room. When he spoke, everyone fell silent. All eyes were on him. His words channeled fury and offered it as hope. In a short time, the party he had been sent to report on became the platform for his voice. Its name was the German Workers' Party, and the name of that young corporal was Adolf Hitler. That night, a spark was lit. Within weeks, he became the party's chief spokesperson. A newspaper was founded. Support grew. His speeches drew crowds. He was no longer just a speaker. He became the voice touching the wounds of a nation. The people were angry, and Hitler gave that anger direction. Years of buried inferiority and humiliation were transformed into a desire for rebirth. In a time of crisis, as a nation wandered in the dark, Hitler claimed to carry a torch, and people followed, without asking where it would lead. Years later, when Hitler had become the leader of Germany, he was no longer surrounded only by politicians, but also by those drawn to darker beliefs. SS leader Heinrich Himmler, in particular, was deeply interested in ancient symbols, pagan rituals, Atlantis legends, and arcane texts. He transformed Wewelsburg Castle into a kind of occult center. In its quiet halls, rituals were held that sought to revive the lost wisdom of a forgotten civilization. Atlantis, believed by some to be the origin of the Aryan race. Many SS officers and advisors believed that destiny was not determined solely by politics, but by spiritual and mythological forces. The ideas of the Thule Society and similar groups echoed behind the scenes of Nazi ideology. Hitler may not have been a direct member of these secret orders, but his world was increasingly woven with these esoteric thoughts. This was no longer just a regime. It had become a story of fate, interpreted through unseen forces. When Austria was annexed in 1938, the first thing Nazi troops did was recover the Spear of Destiny and bring it to Berlin. It was no longer a historical artifact, but a ritual object. SS leader Himmler began to rebuild Wewelsburg Castle to harness the spear's power. Nightly ceremonies were held, circles were drawn, ancient texts were read aloud, and Europe began to kneel. With his blitzkrieg tactics, Hitler struck like lightning. France fell within weeks. Britain trembled. he turned east. No one could stop him. It was as if he held an invisible power in his hands. Throughout history, every leader who possessed the spear of destiny followed the same arc. Alexander the Great, Charlemagne, Napoleon, all rose, all conquered, but all fell the moment they lost the spear. Did Hitler not know this? Or did he know and choose to challenge it? By 1945, Berlin was surrounded by Soviet forces, the city was burning, bunkers overflowed, and the spear still held its place. Then American soldiers reached it. The time was 3 p.m. At 3:30 p.m. on the same day, Hitler was dead. According to legend, when the spear leaves its owner, so too does his life force. Hitler's death was the final line of the prophecy. The spear had changed hands, and his time had ended. Nostradamus speaks of this ending in another verse. A black sun shall rise, blood will again flow, and the iron ruler's reign shall be broken. But the story doesn't end here. After Hitler's death, the spear briefly passed into the hands of American soldiers. But before long, it returned to where it had begun, the Hofburg Palace in Vienna. The man who first saw it in his youth was gone, but the spear had returned to the place where it had first called to him. Fate had completed its circle. Still, the questions remain. Is the spear truly powerless now, or is it simply waiting for its next master?